Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today I bring you guys Meridia's Guardian updated for Murkmire. That's right, we are back with Meridia's Guardian, and there has been some adjustments to it. I did choose the Argonian race this time. There's a reason for it. I'm not happy, but I chose it. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So as you guys can see, we are in Argonian Templar. We do have 15 in health, 49 into stamina, but that's to give us a decent rounded pool. So as you can see with the max magicka, we have 18k, 3k max health, 25k stamina. We have good magic recovery, which is really good and really important for this. And then we have an 1868 weapon damage, 20% weapon critical, which isn't important. We do have a 2400 spell resist with a 2200 physical resist on the front bar and on the back bar. So we are using Ebon Armory as one of the gear sets, and we do have the Antronach Mundus Stone for the extra magic recovery, and it plays really, really important into this build. We do have a increase Tri-Staff food. I don't know where this came from. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I can't. It won't let me. I think it was like one of the daily rewards, and I just used it. But yeah, Tri-Staff food. Going on to the gear, starting with the monster set, we are using Swarm Mothers. Now, why Swarm Mothers? Well, one, Swarm Mothers gives us stamina recovery. And whenever we block attacks from enemies at range, the more than 5 meters away, we can pull them to us every second. So every second we can pull enemies to us, which is really nice. We aren't using a chain. We're using ranged taunt, so we can range taunt those ranged enemies and bring them to us, which is really good with this set. The next set we are using is Meridia's Blessed Armor. Now, a lot of people still to this day tell me that this doesn't work like it's supposed to. It does. It works on trash mobs. It just doesn't work on the, like, named mobs. We'll say that. So, still works on trash. Really good. Works on minor enemies. So, it's a really good set. It also gives you physical and spell resist, which is needed for this build. So, really good. Next up, we are using the Ebon set. We are using the boots and the gloves for this here, plus the jewelry, because if you use it in the sword and shield and you swap weapons, you actually lose the 1000 health it gives. Down on the jewelry, we do have 2 weapon damage. You can use 2 block cost reduction here if you want. I like using weapon damage. And then 1 magic recovery on an infused. So these are 2 Tri-Rune, with this one being infused. The reason I went Tri-Rune, healthy would be better on this option, but the reason I went Tri-Rune is so I could bring my max stamina and magicka up a little bit more, so I have a little bit more to play with. So, moving on to the sword and shield, which is the Meridia's Blessed. We are using 2 sturdy with the Tri-Stats in them, and then on the weapons we're using a Crusher enchant on the main bar and a Weakening enchant on the back bar. We'll get to the reasons why when we get to skills. But going over the gear sets, we have 3 infused here on the big pieces with Tri-Stats, and on the smaller pieces we have 2, all of them sturdy with healthy in it. Sorry. This helps out, and we have a medium and light helm. So, and everything else is heavy. This helps us get really good resistances the best we can. So, and the reason for the sturdy shield is to help increase our block cost reduction. We want to save blocking a lot on this. Because you will be blocking, but not as much as you used to. Not melee attacks. Ranged attacks is fine. Melee attacks, you're only getting 20% on, so it's kind of horrid, but it helps. All right, so that is the gear. Moving on to the skills. Make sure you get all your class passives. It's really important, guys, for this build to work properly. Moving on to the weapons, one-handed sword and shield, make sure you get all the passives. You're gonna want it, gonna need them really, really badly. The sword and shield passive, just so you guys know, you can block 20% of the incoming damage with the sword and shield. So with this build, you get 20% on sword and shield from melee and 35% with ranged. So because of us losing Spear Wall on the class passive, we lose the extra 15% from melee. So we got to play a little bit more reliable on shield stacking. Kind of. Alright, moving on. Armor passives. Make sure you get the top 3 of the light armor. Medium armor, you want the top 2 and the bottom one. And on heavy, you just need the all of them. So, Soul Magic, Soul Summons, and Soul Lock. I get those because they help. Fighters Guild, you don't really need these two, but I just unlocked them just in case you want to use them. And I unlocked all the passives because in case I use them. Persuasive Will on the Mages Guild. Psijic Order, make sure you get all of them. Undaunted, just need the bottom 2. And I did unlock these 2 in case you want to use them. Inner Fire and Bone Shield. These are 2 that you can use. So, alright, moving on to Alliance stuff. Several passives there, just because I'm going to be using them. Nothing there. Moving on to Argonian. Make sure you get all the Argonian passives, and then Alchemy, Medicinal Use, and Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. So, starting with the skills on the front bar, we are using Pierce Armor. This is our Major Breach, Major Fracture, plus our Taunt. It does do a decent amount of damage, but you're not there to do damage, you're there to tank. Next up, we have Heroic Slash. This is your Minor Maim. This is what you're going to be using to put that on a single target, not multiples. And it gives you minor heroism, which is pretty good. Next up, Blazing Shield. Now, I chose Blazing Shield on this build because, to me, it's better than the other one. The other one does do damage up front, but it's made more for a Magicka build. And it does give better on the shield strength for how many targets are around you, but it's only 2% more, and it's not really that much. And Blazing Shield does tend to help with damage a little bit more. Next up, we have Resolving Vigor. Now, I chose Resolving Vigor because I like this skill, because it applies the heal to everyone around you. So, it's really nice. Then, of course, we have Deep Thoughts here. We have this here for the Psijic Order passive. Just so you guys can see. Deliberation. While channeling, you get 30% magic protection. Or major protection, sorry, for reducing incoming damage by 30% while it's active. With your resistances and in your buff. If you need it, use this, and you'll get more health back also, and you'll also get a lot of other stuff. You also get Concentrated Barrier, which, as you can see, is a 5,800 point damage shield, so you get a 5,800 point damage shield when you block. So really good. The next ability we have on our bar is kind of like a poop button. It's Shield Discipline, and this allows us to block all incoming attacks for 7 seconds. And all of our sword and shield abilities cost 100% less. So we can use Taunt, we can use Heroic Slash with no cost. So, kind of a good ability. If you don't want to use this, I would suggest using Dawnbreaker. On to the back bar. We do have the ranged Taunt Inner Fire here. You don't, that's the other reason why I didn't choose one here, is it's up to you which one you want to use. There are 2 morphs. There is Inner Rage, which is a Magicka Taunt, and then there is Inner Beast, which is a Stamina Taunt. As you can see, this one costs almost 4k Magicka. This one costs 3,237. This is the cheaper one, but it does take stamina, and you're going to be using stamina for blocking and other things. Next ability we have on our bar is Razor Caltrops. The main reason why I put this here is because, one, it does a decent amount of damage to enemies, and it reduces their movement speed by 30% every second, or for that first second. Ooh. But then on top of that, it also reduces their movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds as long as they're standing in this. Now, it does reapply. If they're standing in the circle, it will reapply. So, after the 3 seconds. So, it's a pretty good, like, slow on trash, and it helps you keep them contained a little better. Nice dot, too. Next up, we have Power of the Light. Now, Power of the Light's a really strong ability because it applies Minor Fracture and Minor Breach. And on a tank, that can be really good. So it helps your group increase their DPS, that kind of stuff. It also does damage, and it stacks damage. So the more you keep this up, the more damage enemies can take. It helps with DPS from your group. Not only by the Minor Breach and Minor Fracture, but it also allows them to stack 15k damage on the enemy. So next, we have Repentance. This is if you need it. Not really necessary, but you have it. So, last but not least, we have Channeled Focus for the Magicka Return. This is our Major Ward, Major Resolve buff. This increases physical and spell resistance by 5,280. While standing in the circle, you also increase your spell and physical resistance by another 50%, which is amazing, by the way. Makes you really tanky. This is the reason why we don't use other things. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have it activated, so you can see for yourself. We have 32,000 spell and 30,000 physical. We don't need a monster set or anything giving us extra resistances. We can actually get away with a lot with this. So, and while we have this circle going, as you can see, we do have a 1267 magic recovery on the back bar. On the front bar, we have a 1165, but we also get 240 magicka back. So this allows us to maintain. So if we have this down and we're using Blazing Shield to mitigate damage, you'll see it comes back pretty quick. And if you're blocking, you still get a lot of this back, and you can use the Argonian's passive for resource return on potions. So it's really good. And then if you do pop a pot, you get a lot of magic recovery back too. So you can basically keep this up a lot, like pretty much all the time now, because your magic recovery goes to 13 something. You actually are getting 1500 every 2 seconds, so it's kind of nice, and it really helps maintain that damage shield a lot easier. So I will be showing this build in action here in a second, but before I do, we need to finish with the skills. And last but not least is Aggressive Warhorn. This increases max magic stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. It also grants major force to your DPS that increases their critical damage by 15% for 9.5 seconds. Really helpful. The other nice thing is when you have this down, any heals you use are increased by 8%. So as you can see, Vigor for us is 2087. And if it crits, it's almost a 4K heal. And then if we use this heals for 2K, 3K when it crits. So it's kind of a nice, hey, guess what? You're not going to hurt me. And we get 30% damage reduction plus almost 50% damage mitigation. So it's like, and we have a 40% damage reduction, honestly, because of CP. So moving on to the CP, starting with the red tree, we have 66 in Ironclad. We don't really need the 81 because we have so much resistance and damage shields that an extra 2% isn't going to make a huge difference, guys. It really isn't. Moving on, we have 56 in the Hardy and Elemental Defender. This gives us 12%, and then when you add the 30% from the Liberation from the Psijic Order skill line while using the channel, that's a 42% damage reduction. So really good, and then the high resistances. 23 into Thick Skin, reducing damage taken by 10% from bleeds, that kind of stuff. And then 40 into Bastion, increasing on the effectiveness of our damage shields. And then 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing healing received by 10% or 5%. With the Argonian's extra 5%, that's a 10% increase in healing received, which is good. We lost 8%, we gain nothing. But with Argonian, it really helps. 10% into the Heavy Armor Focus. This increases your physical resistance by an extra 1,000, which we don't have a lot of physical resist with because of the Templar passive that gives us increased magical resist. So we have less physical resist. So giving this an extra 1,000 is pretty good. Moving on, 40 into Warlord. This reduces break free costs by 16%. 21 into Bashing Focus. Reduces bash costs by 13%. 43 into all three of these. That gives us 10% stam recovery, 10% magic recovery, and 10% return on our fully charged heavy attacks. Moving on over here, we have 56 into Shadow Ward, reducing block cost by another 20%. We have a 56% reduced cost, plus all of our sturdy pieces. We actually it only costs us like 600 to block. 657 or something. We do have 23 into Tumbling, which reduces dodge roll cost by 10%, and then 1 into Befoul. This is if you want to use like Reverberating Bash against the Ice Witch in Dire Frostkeep, and that other chick in one of the other dungeons. We also have 43 into Bless. This increases our healing done by 10%. We have 25 into Physical Weapon Expert, giving us 15% increased damage to our light and heavy attacks. We have 56 into Master at Arms, 20% direct damage direct damage on our attacks. And then 23 into Shattering Blows. This really helps, not only in PvP, but it does help in PvE. There's a lot of enemies that do have damage shields. This allows you to do damage through those shields, so kind of a nice trade-off. It also allows us to get Butcher Reposit and retaliation. So that's kind of a nice trade-off. That extra 5% when enemies are below 25% health helps in overland play, not so much in dungeon play, but overland play, public dungeons, delves. It really helps in those cases when you're solo playing. We have 56 in a mighty, increasing our physical damage done with poison. Well, mainly physical damage because we don't know poison and disease. And then 56 into precise strikes. This increases critical damage and critical healing by 20%. Really good trade-off here. As we know, we have a 20% in there, and then we have 11 in piercing, increasing our physical pen. We can basically have a 100% physical pen on normal mobs in the open world. In dungeons and trials, we get like half that. So really nice on a tank. It just helps with our overall DPS. So it's a nice setup. Nice setup. So, yeah. That's the CP. Now, let's go ahead and see this sucker in action. I'm not going to worry about switching it over to veteran mode. I'm just going to show you guys this on normal so you guys can see. Unless, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. Oh, it is on veteran. So, I'll show you guys it in action over here. I'm probably going to die. I'm not going to lie because I'm not going to dish out enough damage. But I will show you guys its survivability. Most of my Templar builds will be using the channel focus instead of rune focus. Rune focus is more for a stamina DPS than it is a tank. Unless you're using all sturdy and block cost reduction stuff. Unless you're playing the meta. And then rune focus is a better option. Because at 200, like your blocking is like 400 and something, and with it being 240, it saves you quite a bit on resources with blocking. That's if you're perma blocking in trials and stuff. And it's still good to go with a set like Bloodspawn on that, or something that gives you a lot of stamina recovery with that kind of setup, because then if you need to drop your block to heavy attack, you can. And Templars are really good at dropping their block because we have such high damage shields, we can do that. So, starting over here, we're going to go ahead and go in here. We're going to drop our circle. And as you guys can see, like, with this, I'm not going to use my damage shield too much. I do need to do it because I need to heal some. But I'll even use this so you guys can see. Like, I'll use that and then I'll do this. And you guys can see for yourselves. Like, I can stand there, like, float here with my circle. And that thing, like, I get healed. I can heal right through it. So, okay, swap. Let's do this again. Now you guys will watch. I can like heal through most of the incoming damage. If I have Vigor going too. So I can heal because they can't deal enough damage to me. And if I have my damage shield up and then I do it, I can pretty much get all my resources back. And then go right into blocking kind of thing. So it's not a bad tank. I'm not going to lie. It's not a great tank either. But with the resource amount that you have, and the other stuff, like, you can keep up block pretty well with this build. As long as this is down, and you have your damage shields, like, you can keep up block pretty well. So... I don't like that you have to do this way, because it's not as good as it once was, like I said. This build used to be a lot better. But because of all the changes to things, like, it's just not good. It's not great. But I could stay here forever, guys. Like, I don't really have stamina issues. I'm just playing it off, mostly. Because, like I said, our damage shields are so strong, we can sit here and we can keep them up and then heavy attack and keep resources coming in. As long as you keep Vigor going and you have that damage shield, you can keep your resources coming in indefinitely without needing to block, really. The only time you should really have to block is if you're on a boss. And even with Vigor and the blocking, like, you can almost mitigate all the incoming damage, so... As long as your resistance is hard maintaining, so... And with the Argonia's passive for potion use, like, even at 25k, it's really good, so... Now, if you wanted to, because of having the high magicka, or the high healing and all that stuff, you could swap out some of the abilities for some of the class heal stuff. Like the AoE purge heal thing, some of that, and it works out really well, so... But I'm gonna go ahead and let him kill me. And you guys saw for yourselves, like, this thing's got some really good resource management. It's a good overall build. Go ahead and waste rain. But yeah, that's Meridia's Guardian. It's not as effective as it once was, but it's still a pretty good build. So yeah. And I do like using the weakening and crusher on it. It really helps maintain a decent amount of DPS and damage. And not just DPS, but it helps with the group DPS. It helps with damage. It helps with everything, like mitigating damage. It's kind of nice. So, that's Meridia's Guardian, guys. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in-game. Bye.